Hello, fourth grade. I wanted to get on here to introduce the book that we will be reading together in the afternoons during this semester at school. The book is titled The Cricket in Times Square. It is written by George Selden. George Selden was born May 14th in 1929. So that was the time of the Great Depression. So he probably didn't grow up with all the things that we have today, like the toys and nice games to play and everything like that. So he probably had to use his imagination and be very creative with the things that he did have in order to be able to have fun. So that probably helped him to be able to write good children's books because he used his imagination a lot as a child. He was born in New York, and his book is centered around New York City, so he probably was already familiar with um, parts of New York and was very accurate with the way that he described things in New York. He wrote 15 books and 2 plays. His most famous book is the one that we will be reading, The Cricket in Times Square. So as you can see, this book, it's got a little cartoon mouse and a cat and a cricket. And all of the illustrations in his book are pencil drawn and they're in black and white. So this book was published in 1929. So his book received 2 awards. One is called the Lewis Carroll Shelf Award, and it is called that because there's a book called Alice in Wonderland, and this award was given to books that were said to be just as great and imaginative and wonderful as Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland. And because of that, they were able to sit on the same shelf as Lewis Carroll's book, Alice in Wonderland. That's why the award was called the Lewis Carroll Award. And the other award is the Newbery Honor Award. And that goes to a book once a year that is, it goes to the author. It's the most distinguished, which means like respected or successful children's book for that year. So each year a Newbery Award is given out. So this book won a Newbery Award one year. So the story takes place in the subway station of Times Square, which is in New York City. And there's a newsstand, and I included a picture of a newsstand, something what it would look like in the 1960s, which is when this was set. And it was owned by a family, the Bellini family. And they were immigrants, which means that they moved from one country to another country to live. And they were immigrants from Italy. So there's Mama and Papa Bellini and their little boy Mario. And they own this newspaper stand, and that's how they were able to live in America. And so it kind of shows a little bit throughout the story what life would be like living in a busy city during the 1960s. Some of the main characters is Tucker, a mouse. He lived in the drain pipe of a subway station in Times Square. And Mario, that's the little boy, the Bellini son, and he worked at his parents' newsstand. So he would help sell the newspapers if his parents were busy doing something else. Then he knew how to run the shop for them, which is very different from now because you couldn't go work where your parents work. But Mario was able to do that with his parents. And then there's also a lost cricket named Chester. He ended up in Times Square because he got lost one day and he accidentally got himself into a situation where he ended up in Times Square, but he's actually from a meadow in Connecticut. So he was a country cricket. And so part of the storyline is Mario is introduced to this cricket because he hears him chirping. So he decided to keep the cricket for a pet. And then Tucker the mouse was watching all of this happen, so he decided to become friends with the cricket Chester as well. And there's something special about Chester, but I don't want to tell you what it is. I would like you to find out when we read the story together. So Chester is introduced to Mr. Smedley. He's a musician who prophesies, which means he's telling what would happen in the future, that one day the cricket will sing and everyone will fall silent to hear it. And as you can see, the the cat in the picture as well. And this mouse and the cricket look a little bit scared, so you'll find out about that later as well. So because of an accident that happens in the story, Mama Bellini wants to get rid of the cricket. And you can see that something happened. But again, I want you to wait and find out what happens for yourself when we read the story together this year. Chester becomes famous for a certain talent. You can see all of the people in this picture from the book, and they're all staring at Chester. And he becomes famous for a special reason that you will find out. And he also grows unhappy because of this special talent that he has. So this book is titled because the whole story is centered around Chester the cricket and his adventures in Times Square. Now there are a few traits that are in this story that we find. One of them is honesty, and you know what honesty means, and loyalty. So that's faithfulness, being true to someone, being a good friend, sticking with someone, things like that. Friendship, you know about friendship, and contentedness. And being content means being happy wherever you are. And Paul said in the New Testament, he said, "Whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content." And so as we go through this book, then I want you to look for these traits while we read this together. And you will find them among the animals and the boy and his parents. And I want you to just look for them. And you can also find these traits in the Bible. So we will be looking at Bible verses that go with these traits. And so I hope you enjoy this book. It's a very exciting book. I enjoy reading it and looking at the pictures that go with it.